This cyclist walked into Judge Judy's courtroom thinking the driver owed him money, but minutes later, one tiny blind spot destroyed his entire case. At first, it looked simple. A bicycle accident, a damaged bike, an angry young man, a worried aunt, and a driver standing in court saying, "It wasn't my fault." To everyone watching, it sounded like another everyday courtroom dispute. Somebody got hurt, somebody lost property, somebody wanted money, but in Judge Judy's courtroom, the truth has a way of crawling out from the smallest details, not from dramatic speeches, not from emotional stories, not from who looks more innocent. Sometimes, the whole case collapses because of one question, one diagram, one moment of hesitation. And in this case, it all came down to a dumpster, a sidewalk, a driveway, and a young man who thought he could explain his way around common sense. The plaintiff was a woman named Miss Reed, but the moment she stood before Judge Judy, it became clear she wasn't really the center of the case. She was there because the bicycle belonged to her. She had loaned it to her nephew, and now that bicycle was supposedly totaled. So she wanted the defendant to pay for it. Simple enough, but Judge Judy looked at her and immediately cut through the noise. Miss Reed wasn't there when the accident happened. She didn't see the bike. She didn't see the car. She didn't see the collision. She didn't know who was moving fast, who was stopping, who had the right of way, or who ignored what they should have seen. She was only a nominal plaintiff. The real story belonged to her nephew, so Judge Judy told him to stand up. And that's when the courtroom shifted, because the nephew looked confident. He had dates, he had times, he had a GPS app, he had diagrams, he had a carefully prepared explanation. He came in ready, maybe too ready. And Judge Judy noticed. He began explaining that the accident happened on July 15, 2014, around 2 p.m. He was biking from his cousin's house to his aunt's house, about 3 miles away. He was riding south on Van Nuys Boulevard using the bike lane. Then came the obstacle, a dumpster. A large dumpster blocking part of the bicycle lane, and that detail mattered, because when a bicycle lane is blocked, a rider has a choice: move into traffic or move onto the sidewalk. He chose the sidewalk. That one choice became the heart of the entire case. At first, it almost sounded reasonable. A cyclist sees a blocked bike lane. He wants to avoid cars. He goes onto the sidewalk. Then, near a driveway entrance for a car dealership, a driver pulls in. The cyclist says the driver hit him. The driver says the cyclist caused the crash. And now Judge Judy had to answer the question. Everyone in the room was silently asking, who should have stopped? But here's where things started to get uncomfortable. The defendant, Mr. Fleck, disagreed with the nephew's version. He said the cyclist had been on the sidewalk the whole time. He said the young man admitted at the scene that it was his fault. He said the cyclist apologized, and most importantly, he said the cyclist couldn't have safely entered that driveway area without checking first. Judge Judy didn't accept everything from either side automatically. She went straight to the diagrams, because diagrams don't get emotional, diagrams don't yell. Diagrams don't apologize later and then deny it in court. They show positions, they show angles, they show what people claim happened before their stories become polished. And when Judge Judy looked at those diagrams, the case began to crack. The dumpster, even in the defendant's version, appeared to be interfering with the bicycle lane. In the nephew's own diagram, it looked even worse. So Judge Judy accepted one important fact. Yes, the dumpster created a visibility problem. Yes, the cyclist couldn't fully see the driveway. And yes, the driver couldn't fully see the cyclist. But then came the question that changed everything. Judge Judy looked at the nephew and asked, "Why didn't you stop?" And that was the moment the energy changed, because the nephew didn't have a powerful answer. He tried to explain that it wasn't a real intersection. It was just a pull-in for a dealership, but Judge Judy wasn't buying it. To her, a driveway where cars turn in is still a danger point. A cyclist approaching a blind driveway on a sidewalk cannot just keep moving and hope nothing comes out. Hope is not safety. Confidence is not caution. And being mostly able to see is not the same as being able to see everything. The nephew tried to defend himself. He said he could see about 90% of the area. Only a small sliver was blocked. And that's when Judge Judy delivered the line that sliced straight through the entire case. She said that as you get older, you get smarter. Because it is always that little sliver you don't see that hurts you. The courtroom understood immediately. That was the lesson. Not the bike, not the money, not the damaged property. The lesson was that the danger was exactly in the place the cyclist ignored, the one tiny unseen space. The one moment he assumed would be safe, the one place where caution mattered most, and he rolled right into it. Now the case became more intense. Judge Judy turned to the actual impact, because if the driver really hit the cyclist the way the nephew claimed, the evidence should make sense. The nephew said the defendant T-boned him, but his own diagram didn't show that clearly. Judge Judy had him walk over and point to the collision mark. That's when things began falling apart. The yellow mark on the diagram did not support his story the way he wanted it to. Judge Judy pointed out that the mark suggested the bicycle struck the front passenger side area of the vehicle, not a clean head-on hit, not a dramatic car smashes bike scenario, not the kind of impact the nephew seemed to be describing. He tried to say the dot only showed that a collision happened, not the exact point of collision. But by then, Judge Judy had already caught the problem. The story was shifting. First, he suggested the driver hit him. Then the diagram suggested the bike hit the car. Then he said it was more like a T-bone. Then Judge Judy pushed him further. If the driver had really hit him that way, she asked, wouldn't the car have kept going and run him over? The nephew said yes. But that wasn't what happened, and Judge Judy didn't believe it. You could feel the courtroom leaning in. This was no longer just about who owed money. This was about whether the plaintiff's side had walked into court with confidence, but not truth. Then Judge Judy turned to the defendant. Mr. Fleck explained that after the collision, he tried to get out of the car, but according to him, the cyclist was angry, very angry. He yelled, he cursed, he told him not to get out. The driver said he only opened the door slightly and asked if he was okay. For a few minutes, emotions were high. Then the cyclist calmed down, and according to the defendant, the young man apologized, not just for yelling, but for being on the sidewalk, for being angry, for creating the situation. Now listen closely, because this is where courtroom psychology becomes fascinating. People often act one way at the scene of an accident, and another way after they realize money might be involved. At the scene, shock can bring honesty, fear can bring honesty, embarrassment can bring honesty. A person might say, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that." But later, when the bike is destroyed and someone wants payment, the story can become cleaner, more defensive, more polished. Suddenly the apology disappears. Suddenly responsibility becomes uncertain. Suddenly the other person becomes the villain. Judge Judy has seen that pattern for decades, and she knows exactly what it looks like. So, when the defendant said the cyclist apologized, and the cyclist didn't have a strong enough explanation to overcome the diagrams and the common sense problem, the courtroom could feel where this was going. But the biggest reveal had not landed yet. The viral moment came from something almost painfully simple. The defendant was driving an Audi A6, a fairly new car. Judge Judy asked if there was damage. There wasn't. No major damage. No clear vehicle damage, proving the dramatic impact the cyclist described. That mattered, because if a car had truly slammed into a bicycle in the way the nephew was trying to describe, you would expect something: a dent, a scrape, a damaged fender, a mark, some physical evidence supporting the story. But there was nothing meaningful. The defendant said the cyclist seemed to be braking, swerving, losing balance, and then colliding with the side of the car before falling. That version fit the physical picture better. It fit the blind spot, it fit the sidewalk, it fit the lack of car damage, it fit the apology, and it fit the one rule Judge Judy kept coming back to: when you cannot see, you stop. You don't keep going because you're 90% sure. You don't gamble with a moving vehicle. You don't ride through a blind driveway and then blame the person you made yourself invisible to. That was the hidden truth of the case. The cyclist wasn't just unlucky. He ignored the one place where caution was required, and then he tried to make someone else pay for the consequence. Judge Judy had heard enough. Her ruling came fast, cold, final. Pay for your own bike. Pay your aunt back for the bike. Your fault, you're bad. Take responsibility. Case dismissed. And just like that, the case was over. No long lecture. No dramatic punishment. No drawn-out debate. Just responsibility landing exactly where Judge Judy believed it belonged. But the ending carried something bigger than a bicycle. Because outside the courtroom, both sides still had their version of what happened. The cyclist admitted he had been upset. The driver said he understood why the young man was angry. Everyone seemed relieved that nobody was seriously hurt. And that is the part people sometimes miss. This case could have been much worse. A damaged bicycle can be replaced. A bruised ego can heal. A courtroom loss can be forgotten. But a blind turn, a moving car, and a cyclist who doesn't stop, that can end very differently. Judge Judy's ruling wasn't just about money. It was about adulthood, responsibility, and the dangerous habit of blaming others for the risks we choose to take. Because life is full of those little slivers, the tiny blind spot, the one detail you ignore, the one moment you think, it'll probably be fine. And then suddenly, it isn't fine. That young man walked into court thinking the driver owed him for a bicycle. But he walked out with a harder lesson. Being injured or shaken doesn't automatically make you right. Being angry doesn't make you innocent, and having a diagram doesn't help when the diagram turns against you. In Judge Judy's courtroom, sympathy is never enough. You need facts. You need logic. You need common sense. And when common sense is missing, justice doesn't hesitate.